I've seen Mycopunk compared to a few different games now. Risk of Rain, Borderlands, Helldivers, and most notably, Deep Rock Galactic. But let me be absolutely clear when I say that this game is like 90% Deep Rock and then 10% everything else. Mycopunk is incredibly Deep Rock coded, and it is noticeable. The whole gameplay loop may as well be ripped from Deep Rock and placed in an entirely new setting, because from the character options, the mission select screen, the mission types, weapons, and general gameplay, it's going to feel right at home for Deep Rock veterans. Now, let me be absolutely clear for a second time. None of that is a bad thing, because what's most important here is that they spin up something unique within the mission-based Deep Rock formula, and they have. First of all, this setting is something I haven't seen before, or at least not in this cel-shaded art style. If mycology is the study of fungi, then Mycopunk is clearly the best way to describe this game's fungi-inspired art style. Unfortunately, I don't have too many things to say about the game's environment and its impact on the gameplay, as it doesn't really have an impact on gameplay. It is designed around movement abilities of which the characters have, but beyond that, it seems like nothing but a static backdrop that houses some resource nodes and a few interactables. But the game is in early access, so maybe there's more to come in this area. The real treat of Mycopunk's setting lies in the enemy design, and what they've done here is really fucking cool. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of how the whole system works, so I'm going to describe it as simply as I can to avoid misinformation. But essentially, enemies spawn with a core. The core is the only way to fully kill that enemy, and if left unkilled, that core can then go and pick up guns, limbs, and other equipment that's been dropped on the ground from other enemies. You'll frequently notice enemies slowly adding more limbs and weapons to themselves, so completely destroying guns once they're dropped on the ground is a good idea so that they aren't picked up again. I don't know all the conditions of this system and the intricacies of what enemies can do what, so I can't comment on its complexity, but the basics alone add a whole new layer to gameplay. So one of the issues a few people, some of my friends included, had with Deep Rock Galactic is that you're essentially performing the same mission and tasks over and over again, and when they'd done it all, that was enough for them and they called it quits. Which is fair enough. I felt something similar when playing Deep Rock 2. Yeah, there are deep dives and there's a bunch of variety you can get with modifiers that spice it up, but you can understand where people are coming from. That could certainly happen to you in Mycopunk. Now, I'm down to keep playing the same shit over and over, but you have to give me a reason to. Mycopunk's reason is the upgrading and customization of your class and weapons, and Mycopunk's system of choice is grid-based. As you unlock more upgrades, you'll have to fit them into this grid, meaning the extent of your power is essentially defined by the rarity of the upgrade and your ability to puzzle out the most efficient build. I like this a lot, like a lot. Apparently, you unlock the ability to rotate these upgrades at player level 30, but for the moment, I'm stuck fucking losing my mind because not everything fits perfectly. But it's fine. I'll wait. For me, this is plenty of reason to keep playing. A power creep, however slow, will keep me intrigued for longer than most, and I am still intrigued. But okay, I feel like I've got completely ahead of myself. What do you actually do in this game? How do you get upgrades? What characters are there? What are the guns like? There's a lot of questions I can be answering, but I'll stick to the important ones. If you're familiar with Deep Rock's missions, then these will feel very similar. From missions asking you to kill X amount of enemies, to missions where you have to align a laser to blow up a ship in space. It is all here. On completion of said mission, you'll get rewards. These can be upgrades, resources, special items, and currency. The harder you pump the difficulty, the more rewards you get. There's a couple extra layers involved though, like killing abominations, which can grant you an upgrade, as well as some side objectives appearing during your missions for extra rewards. Now, I would love to comment on the pace of progression, but I can't for two reasons. The first is that I'm pretty early on in this game, and the second is that I've only played solo so far. So let's talk about that second one. Some co-op shooters will be mostly playable solo, with some difficulties or mission types proving to be hard to manage as a single person. I've definitely felt way too overwhelmed on more than one occasion in Mycopunk, and that always just gives me a bad feeling. Like, I want the most XP and rewards I can get, right? But I can only get the most by playing the harder difficulties. Where I'm at now, the harder difficulties prove too overwhelming, but the lower difficulties prove too unrewarding. It's just a really bad case of extremes, and it's hard to manage. This isn't the case with every mission type, but because of the amount of enemies that can be thrown at you, some missions tasks become somewhat unfeasible. Health and damage generally aren't the issue, it's just the sheer amount of enemies that are thrown at you. I find myself trying to avoid the horde of enemies coming my way just to get some of the missions tasks done. Take all of that with a grain of salt, but I wouldn't be surprised if other solo players have a similar experience, although I have a feeling it's probably just a part of progression I have to push through. Alright, I'll give some brief praise to the movement and gunplay mechanics before we end it, because they are pretty good. They aren't anything special, but it's a shooter, and both these mechanics are important. Movement isn't as solid as it could be, but that's me asking for the extra 20% when they've already got 80% of the way there. Probably what I'm after is a little bit more speed and control, but I'm very much nitpicking, especially when your movement can be affected directly through upgrades. I feel the same way about gunplay. It feels good, if only slightly stiff, but I do like the way recoil feels in general. All the effects and visuals that complete the gunplay package are great too. Chipping away at enemies' armor and then finally destroying its core is as satisfying as you'd want it to be, without being over the top or creating readability issues. Since I play with higher digital vibrance, sometimes the brighter effects can be a problem, but that's just me warning other people who play the same way. I'm too early in my playtime to be absolute on some other issues I can see creeping up, but I'd be far too ahead of myself to call them out now, so I'll hold off. What I can get upset about is this game's lack of a pause feature. When you press escape, even when playing alone, the game continues in the background, and leaving out a pause feature in an indie title such as this is a pretty big sin to me. And what makes this worse is that the developers have said they have no plans to add a pause feature because the game always treats you as if you're in an online lobby. Now, you can read this a bunch of different ways, but from my POV, I don't know why they've built the game around always being online, making it hard, if not impossible, to add a pause feature. It seems like a no-brainer to have a pause feature, and I think it's always going to be something that gets under consumers' skins. It's super unfortunate, and I just wish demand over time pressures them into adding it, even if it's an expensive or time-consuming thing. But if that's the worst thing about Mycopunk, then I can settle for the moment. If you're into Deep Rock, Risk of Rain, and other games in this genre, check it out. It might surprise you. But yeah, that's it. Appreciate you watching. Have a great day. I'll see you later.